Well, hello there. I was just looking at the greatest video game ever made. That's your recommendation for today. This is the first video where I'm going to cover Linux itself. Stick with this. It's not the most exciting stuff, but we're going to get you moving around the file system. Right from the beginning, we're going to start in the command line because that's all I want you to get used to. Yes, Ubuntu, and specifically the version we've installed, which is the desktop version with a graphical environment, is very easy to use. Some would say easier than Windows, certainly on par with OS X. But we're not going to use any of that. We're not going to take advantage of it because one of the keys to becoming good at Linux quickly is to use the command line for everything. I'm going to show you how to do some fun things with the command line as well, like even just browsing the internet. There's a cool little browser you can use. Now, this isn't entirely practical. As a system administrator, you're not going to be spending all of your time. I mean, if you're like searching the web for some kind of answer to a question, you're not going to be using links as a browser in the command line. But the best way to just acclimatize yourself to this weird new environment, Linux, is to just use it all the time and spend as much time as possible in the command line. This stuff will start to feel natural. Okay, so the very first thing we'll do is just open a terminal, which you can do by clicking here and just start searching for terminal, and you will do this. I'm sorry, this is really annoying. The advertisements coming from Amazon, this is like a virtual machine. I haven't done anything. These are just ads coming from Amazon. Man. So you've opened a terminal, and the very first command we're going to look at is list, ls. List shows you what's in your directory. There's a couple of flags for it, and flags are basically arguments or things that you add to the command to make it more specific. So for example, if I list with -a, so that would be the A flag. The flags or options are generally indicated with a dash. That'll show us all files, so hidden files and non-hidden files. You can see it's the same command. I've done it twice, and now we suddenly see way more files and folders than before. Now what's going on here? You can see the ones that we didn't see before all seem to have a little dot, so the period character at the beginning. In Linux, those are hidden files, so anything that you name with a dot at the very beginning becomes hidden. And that's just to generally just keep it out of the way. Like, you don't really need to see all these hidden files. A lot of them are, like for example here, it's irrelevant to you when you're browsing your home folder to see the history of what you've typed into the terminal. Okay, so we can, I want to just clear this, and again, we can list, but we have no idea where we are. So the file system is kind of like a tree. It's like any other file system, like every operating system you've used has a file system that's a lot like this. You have a tree that has a root, and then from there, branches. So in Windows, it's the same. I mean, it's just in Linux it's called root, and root is just a slash. So at the very base of our file system we have root, or the slash. So if we list that, we can give list an argument that's just some kind of path. So instead of just list, which will list the directory that we're sitting in, we can list some folder. So for example, oh, we're sitting in this directory and there's a downloads folder. So we can just list the downloads folder, and that'll let us see what's in there. There's nothing in there. I haven't downloaded anything yet. We can see if we list root, it's the very base of the file system. There's nothing beyond that. That's everything. And we're sitting in a subdirectory of root somewhere. So we're in a branch somewhere down the tree. And we can see where we are in our shell. So at the shell prompt, the prompt is the thing right before you start typing at the shell. It's this shell prompt. We're in bash, so it's just the name of the shell, bash. There's like C shell, corn shell, Z shell, which is the greatest shell known to man, etc. But we're going to start with bash. Obviously, there's also just shell, which I'm forgetting about, sh. Bash is a default shell that you'll find on most systems. And the prompt there is this $sign. So that's your prompt. And right before the prompt is where you are in the file system. So you can always know where you are in the file system by knowing what this means. And this is the only mysterious thing, I promise. The tilde, which is the key that you get if you hit Shift, and then on an American-style keyboard layout, it's the top left key. It's above the angle bracket. Angle bracket. What am I smoking? It's not above the angle bracket. It's the back tick. So top left of your keyboard, under the escape key, and to the left of the 1 on an American keyboard. That's this. The tilde is short for your home. So the user you are, that user's home folder. So, but there's another command, just in case you lose track of where you are. pwd, print working directory. If you hit pwd and then hit enter, it'll show you where you are in the file system, and you can just prints that on the next line and then gives you your shell prompt back, like waiting for your next input. Okay, so we are in our own home folder, which is our username's Dave, so we're in home Dave. And you can see we've got our things. So we can already see we listed root before. You can see that up here. So we can kind of see where we are in that, right? So if we list root again, let's look for the home folder. Yeah, we can see it there. So it's home. You can obviously just, there's easier ways to do this, but I'm just being explicit right now. So, okay, let's list home. Okay, and we can see that directory that we're in, home Dave. It's the only directory in there. So, yep, that's where we're sitting. So if we do, by the way, if you hit the up arrow, it will give you your last command, and you can scroll through your last, I think it's like 1,000 commands like that. Okay, so there's like a Dave directory here, and we can list that. Well, this is really just what we've already done, because we are in here. So if we list and get a listing of the stuff that's where we are, it's the exact same as giving this path explicitly. So the full path, which that's called, is, it always starts with a slash. So that would be root, and then the home directory in there, and then in there, the Dave directory. And we can keep going. We can go, it's in downloads, or it's in desktop. And you can see what I'm doing here is I'm starting to use auto-completion. So when you start typing characters, if it can narrow down the options based on what's in that directory, if you hit tab, I think twice, it'll show you your options that start with that letter. So we can say, yeah, it's DO, and then we hit tab again. You can see that narrows it down some more. And then we finally say, oh, it's the documents that I want. And there's nothing in there. It's very anticlimactic, but I promise you, this is thrilling stuff here. Okay, so what can we do? We can find out where we are. Here, I'll clear this for you. Where the hell are we? We're in home Dave. What's around us? What's in here? And we can list arbitrary directories. So if we have some path like root, home, Dave, desktop, we can list that. Okay, cool. This doesn't do us a hell of a lot of good if we can't move around the file system. So why don't we try moving? We'll go into root. cd is the command, it's change directory. cd slash is cd root. That gets us to the very base of our file system. So we can list. We can see the same thing that we saw last time. So why don't we go from here into home. There we are. Now we can go into our home folder. This is basically where we started. So we've just gone cd to root, and then to home, and then to Dave. Now you notice there's no slashes before any of these, because if you're in a directory, you can enter it by simply doing change directory, cd, and then the name of that directory. You can also use tab completion. However, if you're somewhere else, let's go back to root. If you're sitting in root and you want to get there, you can't just go cd downloads, because there's nothing named downloads in root. I'm being repetitive for a reason, okay? You really need to just get this ingrained in your brain. So if I want to get there from root, where the hell am I? pwd, print working directory. I'm in root. Okay. So if I want to go to downloads, I have to go to home. And you can start using tab completion here too. So change directory to /home. Remember what it was? Dave downloads. Now we're there. So I was talking about magic. You can see the prompt tells you where we are. Here it says, hey dude, you're in root. Here it says, hey dude, you're in the magical tilde directory, which is your user's home. So if I'm sitting in root, let's say, there I am, change directory to root, and I want to go home, all I have to do is type cd tilde. That gets me home. Now you can see I'm in home Dave. That's my home folder. There's another way to do that. And let's say I'm in downloads. Nothing in here. I'm sitting here. I'll clear this again. If I'm sitting here and I want to go back home, let's say, I mean, you can really, I mean, on a production system, if it's like a giant web server that's running some kind of like web application and a huge database and then some kind of simulation software on top of that, you can have very large file systems, and you can kind of get lost in them. So if you just need to get back to your home folder quickly, you can just type cd without any arguments, so without a path after it, and that will get you home. You can see now we're home. Okay. So that covers moving around, and it covers looking at what's in front of us, list, and it covers figuring out where the hell we are if we don't feel like reading the path here. But how do we actually make a file? Okay, so let's make a file. We're sitting in our home folder. Why don't we go on the desktop? So change directory there. Touch creates an empty file. So if you just touch my awesome file, .txt, this is an empty text file. And because I've made it on the desktop, you can actually see, there it is. I could even open this up and type in because boy, it is. Okay, so we've created a file with touch. There's other ways of doing that, but that's just the one I'm going to show you now for playing around. And there's a way of reading. Now some people would get really angry at me here and tell me cat is actually for concatenation, which is reading out files sequentially, which is pointless unless you have more than one file, but you know what? It's an easy way to read text from a file. So we're going to cat, or print out everything that's in here, my awesome file, txt. Wow, that is incredible. I hope you aren't horrified by my dry sense of humor. I actually do think this stuff is cool, but boy, these basics, I'm sure you're just itching to get to something cooler, but the only way is through. Okay, so we've touched a file, or created it. We've written some stuff in there, but how do we write stuff in there from the command line? No, we'll get to that a little bit later. But for now, why don't we create a directory to put that file into. The command for that is make directory, mkdir. So then you use it like any other command. The command, space, a flag with any options that you want. We don't want any. And then the name of the directory. So let's a place for awesomeness. That will be our directory. If we list, we can see all these things. If you're wondering what this weird thing is, damn you, Ubuntu, and get it. Gedit or gedit, the editor I used to just put some text in that file a second ago, creates autosave files, or like temp files. So that's what you're seeing. This is the actual file. But so like if you're editing something and your computer crashes before you save, the state, the stuff you've changed is written into here. But you know, the weird thing is I did save and it didn't get rid of it, which is annoying. So don't get confused by that. Okay, so now we've got the file and a place for the awesome file. Now we've got to move the file. So we've touched the file. We used mkdir to create a folder. And now we can just move the file. I'm using tab completion here, so mv for move. My awesome file to a place for awesomeness. So this sort of formula is going to come up a lot in Linux. You have the command and the arguments it takes, in this case a file name and a place, or a thing and a place. It could be a folder too. And it's always going to be the thing that you're going to change to the target. So it's always like the source and then the target. So first the thing that's close, the thing you're going to do the thing to, in this case moving it. And then the second argument will always be like the target, the place it's going. And that'll be the same across like a wide variety of commands. So just start getting that ingrained now. You want to do something to the first argument, and the second argument's like kind of the target, the place it's going. Any file copying, moving, even like to a remote machine or a server is done that way. Okay, so we're going to move the file to the folder. Shablam. Incredible. If we list a place for awesomeness, you can see the file's in there. We're still sitting on the desktop though, as you can see from my shell prompt here. That sound actually, my text received sound is actually stolen horribly from Deus Ex, the game that I flashed across your screen earlier at the very beginning. It's just such a cool game. I went in there and I took some of my favorite sound effects and made them into like ringtones and other stuff for my phone. So if you hear that chirping in the background, that's what that is. Okay, so we've now successfully created a file, created a folder, moved the file into the folder. But now we've got this really annoying backup file here, this my awesome file txt tilde. I just hate the tilde. So what we're going to do is remove it. Removing a file is very easy. You do it with the remove command, rm. And I'm using tab completion again, so I'm typing in like m, and because the only thing with an m here is that file, a tab will fill it in. So I'm going to go ahead and delete it by using rm to remove. You can see it's gone. Okay, cool. So how about we remove the file inside the folder and the folder itself? How do you get rid of a folder? Well, rmdir is a way of removing a folder, so let's just make a test remove. We're creating a directory test remove, test rm, and we'll do rmdir test rm. Oops. So I'm removing the directory test rm. It's well and good, works, but it only works because the directory is empty. If we go back and create that directory again, that's a cool trick I'm going to show you later. If we just create that folder again, sorry, directory, God, folder, you know, I'm corrupted from the Mac world. I started on Macs like 20 years ago, so I think that horribly wrong vocabulary is somewhere in my brain. Anyway, the directory, test_rm, is now created, and let's just touch a file in there. So like we'll make test_rm test delete file, and it's just like an empty file. But if we list what's in there, we can see the files in there. You can see the folder there. Okay, so let's try rmdir again. We get an error because rmdir generally is only deleting empty directories. I'm just going to teach you to use rm. You can use rm for files, you can use it for directories. It's less stuff to remember. So that's what we're going to do. Remove the test_rm directory. Let's try that. Okay. We're going to use the R for recursively, so everything underneath deleted as well. Okay, now how did I know to do that? If you get an error, the place you should look is, so like if you forget how to use move, right, mv, do I put the file first or the destination? I don't know. Man, for manual, is the command that you should be using basically all the time. Every time you forget how to do something, every time you're wondering how to use the command, man accesses the manual page, the man 8 generally. So just type in man and then the command. How do we do that again? Oh yeah, move and rename files. Q gets you out of here. You can scroll normally, you can use your up-down keys, your page down, but once you want to quit, just Q for quit. Okay, so how did I know to use -R for removing something? Well, you can see it's the name of the command, what it does, tells you which options or flags you can use. So you can see this one is interesting. You'll see this a lot. And this one is interesting. It's the one we just used. So this will traverse through subdirectories and remove all the files inside and then remove all the directories. Okay. So, man, it's really, 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 really important that you learn to use man. Man. Yay, it's wonderful. It's like a meta, incredible command. Okay, so what have we covered? This is the basics, and you should play around with this. You should go around your entire system and CD to different places. Ooh, like let's see what's in. Let's boot. That sounds interesting. Well, it's your kernel and all the stuff that your system uses for booting. What kind of devices do we have? We can go in there. Ooh, lots of teletypes, well, virtual teletypes. And all your hardware devices are kind of mounted here. This is all really confusing, but don't worry about what's in here yet. Just worry about the mechanics of moving around the system, of always keeping in your head where you are, and if you need to cheat, you can always obviously just look at your prompt. If you ever get lost, let's go to, this would be like if we had LVM set up, our whole file system would be in here. Oh my god, I'm lost. Just CD. Go home. It's all good. And you can obviously go home in 3 different ways. You could CD to tilde. That gets you here. You could CD to home and your username. That gets you there. Or you could just hit CD. And that gets you there. You can touch files. This is going to really annoy you later if you make files all over the file system. So I would say keep the files that you create maybe on your desktop. So like go to your home folder or your desktop and create files and directories there. Likewise with removing things, you can bork your whole system if you remove the wrong file in Linux, like especially up here in root. Do not use this with extreme caution because the famous Linux command rmrf root will destroy your entire system. It will just recursively force, so recursively work its way through all the directories in root, which is all of these directories, so your entire system. Delete all the files in there, and then delete the folders, or the directories, leaving you with a totally dead system. So that's the kind of power Linux gives you. You can do anything, but that's also the problem. You can do anything. So use this power wisely, and for now, only in your home folder. Review these commands. If you're writing notes, which maybe is useful, list, print working directory, change directory, touch files, make directories, remove files or directories. And did we do anything else? Yeah, man. Man, oh man. Gotta remember to man. It's okay not to understand some of the man pages. Some of them require that you're like at least a little bit familiar with Linux. A lot of the basic ones for basic commands don't. So before you start Googling like crazy, and before you ask anyone a question, especially before you ask anyone a question, do your research. Do man and then the command that you're having trouble with. Alright, what is this command? What's it supposed to do? Really, read this stuff. This is like a free education on how these things work. Some of it's going to be over your head, and that's okay. But you have to read this stuff, and you have to become someone who researches stuff before you ask questions. That's the path to happy Linux sysadminhood. Good. It's been fun. I'll see you for the next video, and we will proceed from here. So these are the very basics of moving around the file system, copying files, moving files, creating things. We also covered move, and removing things. So you can kind of, these are the basics. Practice this stuff, and I'll see you in the next video.